All right, it looks like we're slowing down a bit on people signing on, so I think we can go ahead and get started. My name is Kyleigh Weinfurtner. I'm an attorney at Zashin and Rich and the co-chair of the family law section at the CMBA. I will be moderating today's program. With me is Brennan Donnellan from the CMBA. He will be taking lead on presenting the Zoom 101 and pro tips for handling a Zoom conference. During the presentation, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat feature and a Q&A button. Feel free to submit questions as Brennan is presenting. If it makes sense, I'll interrupt Brennan, ask the question. Otherwise, we've saved some time at the end of the presentation to answer as many questions as we can. So, Brennan, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kyleigh. And thank you everybody for coming in. We have a nice crowd. We have people watching on Facebook. Hello to you. And we have people watching on Zoom. The purpose of this is Zoom 101. So I tried to keep it to a very basic level, but at the same time, I've got a little something for everybody, I think, from beginners to a few advanced features that I know a lot of folks, especially as attorneys, have been using. So first thing I'm going to do is share my screen. This is a feature in Zoom. If you look down, actually, this is a webinar, so you may not have this feature available. And I'm going to get into the difference in between webinars and so give me a second to share what I have. Share my screen. Okay, so there we go. You should see my title slide for this, Zoom 101. Every participant in a Zoom meeting, if the host allows them, can share their screen. So this is a good way for people to use, PowerPoints and slides, and you can do it collaboratively, so it doesn't just have to be the host, and we'll get into that. But let's start with some very basic stuff. Before you begin, there are certain key things that you can do that will make a big difference in your presentation. If you see the man on the left, he has a bright window behind him. As far as the background mistakes and lighting mistakes that I see people make, having a backlit background with a window like that is one of the biggest mistakes, because the camera settings are automatic. It changes the settings of the camera to darken it, so the speaker's face becomes in the shadows and it's not as good. The person on the right, you can see, has the light on his face. And so that is a great policy to think about. Is my face well lit? Can the audience see me? So that's one basic thing. Secondly, camera position is important. You can see in this photo that the camera is shooting up, kind of up her nose, to be honest with you. She's looking down. It's not a flattering look. It's not what we want. And I think any of you who've participated in Zoom meetings have seen that. And there's an easy fix for that. Camera position. If you're using a laptop, and I'm assuming that a lot of folks will be doing this on a laptop, use a laptop stand. Why? You want the camera to be at or slightly above eye level. You don't want to be looking down at it. You want to be looking at eye level or slightly above. Now, on my camera setup, I am looking down slightly. I do have a laptop stand, but if you don't have a laptop stand, a stack of books can work. If you're doing this on an iPad or a tablet, same idea. Make sure the camera is at eye level, and the same with the phone, really. There are differences in the interface and how the image looks on all of those devices. I've focused a lot on laptops for this presentation, but regardless, eye level or slightly above gives the most flattering look. Secondly, pay attention to your background. It might seem unimportant, trivial, but you don't want distracting things in the background. In this case, this is a reporter in Sacramento who is doing a Zoom from her bathroom. And you may have seen the story. It made national news because her husband is naked in the shower live as she's broadcasting. So we want to avoid that kind of thing by paying attention to your background. This is our president, CMBA President Ian Friedman. This is a well thought out, extremely well thought out, produced background. Some would say it's a lot, but at least you can see that what Ian is doing is he's presenting a distinguished leadership type of look by the background that he's selected. Overall, some tips that I would offer you are limit items on the wall behind you. Be aware of positioning of items. Sometimes somebody will have a plant growing out of their head in the back. And a good rule of thumb with backgrounds is less is more. I'm going to pause here just for a second to say that, remind you that Kyleigh is monitoring Q&A and monitoring chat. And you can feel free to, as we go, as we touch on topics, let's have a discussion about it, because there's a lot of information and I don't, it's not one size fits all. There can be different approaches. And so just let me know what I can do to help you throughout the presentation. Okay, sound is very important. One of the most important things, if everybody will look at the bottom left of your screen, you should have a button that says mute or unmute. This is a webinar, which I'm going to get into, so you may not have the exact same settings, but when you're in a Zoom meeting for a beginner, you will have this mute and this unmute setting. And if you click on audio settings, which you see is one of the choices, if you click on the little triangle next to unmute, among the settings that you will see are set your output volume, set your input volume. Zoom does a good job of setting these things, of optimizing them. However, if somebody says, hey, we can't hear you, that's where you go, audio settings, and you would turn up your audio. Output volume, if you can't hear them, likewise, you can turn up your output volume. This is best used when you're first setting up for Zoom. So you understand, you can test your mic, test your speaker. The Zoom setup process when you install the app really does a pretty good job of walking you through all of that. But I wanted to show you those are the audio settings, and it is important that you have good audio as well as video. Bad sound will ruin your presentation or your meeting. Settings, the settings pop up beside the mute button. All participants should stay muted unless they are speaking. This is really an important rule that we at CMBA have found is necessary because let's say like this group, you've got 30 plus people. If this were a meeting and they could unmute themselves, you get a lot of background noise, dogs barking, feedback. And so as a meeting organizer, it's a great idea to tell people stay muted unless you're speaking. And organizers, as a meeting organizer, we always try to say, hey, Bill, your sound isn't so good. Maybe you could turn it up. Help, and same with the lighting, same with the background. Many times I've said to someone who's the presenter, hey, could you turn your laptop a little bit so it's not so bright? That's a good practice for anybody who's going to be leading these meetings. Help the participants to do it.
And I can see, Brennan, we do have a fair number of court personnel on this. If you are the person hosting the meeting, you can mute and unmute individuals. So if you notice that somebody hasn't muted themselves, you can mute them. If they are muted and are trying to talk, you can unmute them. So when you are the host, you do have the ability to mute and unmute people, anyone who's in the program.
Yes, that's right. And we are going to touch on that too a little bit later, where we dig into the settings. But Kyleigh is exactly right about that. Okay. if you're invited to someone else's meeting, I have been told that there are some folks in this crowd that are really beginners, and the survey that we sent out also reflected that. We want the super basics. And so we're going to go to the super basics. You're not trying to plan a meeting yet. You're simply attending someone else's meeting to which you have been invited. You're going to get an email if you're invited to a meeting that's going to look like one of these two things on the screen. The box on the left is if you're invited to a meeting that requires registration. If you click on that registration link, you're going to have to enter your name, your email address, probably those two things, and then anything else that the host has requested that you have to enter in order to register. If all you have to do is click that link, even if you don't have Zoom installed, even if you've never done this before, you click that link and it will take you to the zoom.us website, and it will walk you through the steps of installing the app, registering in this case, checking your video and audio. And so it's really a matter of just click the link in the email. The little box on the right is some meetings can be done without registration. I tend to say if you have a meeting where you are concerned about controlling who participates, if you have a meeting you're concerned about outsiders, maybe getting in, maybe there's confidential information, or you just don't want other people in, then everyone should have to register. That's a better way for you to control who gets in. If it's just an internal staff meeting, sometimes at CMBA, our marketing team, which is 3 of us, hey, we're gonna have a meeting. We don't put a password or require registration for that meeting. Either way, you click on the link and you'll be taken to the zoom.us website, which will walk you through the very simple steps of installing the app. That's true on a phone, that's true on a tablet, and that's true on any type of computer. So that's, if you want to join a meeting, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to pay anything. That's it. In order to create your own meetings, you have to create an account on the Zoom network at zoom.us. The free Zoom is limited to 40-minute meetings for any meeting that has more than 3 people in it. It doesn't have all the security features. It doesn't have file sharing. Any professional application is most probably going to want to use the Pro format. So that's $14.99 a month. If you need to go bigger, there are upgrades that we'll talk about a little later. But for most small organizations, the Pro will get you what you need. So you visit zoom.us, you create an account. You have to do that before you can host a meeting. And I want to bring up something that Kyleigh brought up earlier, which is starting, I believe, Sunday, May 31st, is there's a Zoom 5.0. If you're using Zoom now, you're going to have to upgrade your Zoom in order to use it. If you go now and install Zoom and you're a beginner, it's automatically going to give you the 5.0. You don't have to worry. But for those that have been more established and using Zoom, there is the deadline looming end of the month where you can no longer use anything other than the 5.0. The reason is they added security features. You've all heard about Zoom bombing. Well, there are measures that I'll show you coming up that will help you prevent that. It's not foolproof, but in many ways it can be made quite secure. Okay, this is an important distinction that you should understand. Meetings versus webinars. We are in a webinar right now. I'm going to start with meeting because that's the way it's laid out on the screen. In a meeting, all participants can be seen, they can speak, they can share their screen based on the security and permissions set by the host. So the meeting is by far the most flexible, the most sort of egalitarian, everybody can participate when allowed. If you are the host of a meeting, you can add co-hosts that will have host type features and enabling, you can mute people, you can kick people out as an extreme case. You can do a lot of things with the co-host. There's one host, the host can add co-hosts in the Zoom app. The capacity of a meeting, the largest Zoom meeting that you can have is 100 people. There is an add-on that you can go up to 500 people. As I consider that, I don't quite know what you would do with 500 people who could all be on screen at the same time. The grid that we sometimes see would be like tiny little pictures, but I haven't done it. So I shouldn't talk too much about it. But as a general rule, as a meeting, capacity 100 participants. A webinar, which is what we are in now, you pay for different scales of service based on that pricing chart that I showed you before. You can have 100, capacity of 100, 500, or up to 10,000 participants in a webinar. So effectively, any number of people can do it. Only the presenters can be seen. As you see in this webinar that we're doing now, only Kyleigh and I can be seen on screen. And you folks can participate by chat. You can participate by the Q&A function. And I, as the host, do have the ability to allow you to speak via audio. I'll show you that again a little bit in the settings. But so a webinar is for a presentation where the audience needs to be controlled, and it prevents, you're not going to be showing them on camera, and they're not going to be presenting or speaking. It's a higher level, I would say, of security than a meeting is. And then there's a note at the bottom of this screen that says a meeting can be upgraded to a webinar, but a webinar can't be downgraded to a meeting. Let's say you made a meeting, you invited people, and you're like, you know what? I just think this is going to work better as a webinar because we can't have all these people competing for the podium, so to speak. You can, within Zoom, change that meeting to a webinar, and the same link will work, and all the participants it'll be fairly seamless for them. You can't create a webinar and then change it back to a meeting. So that's something in the management of Zoom that you have to think about. So if you made a webinar, but then you want to do a meeting, you're going to have to cancel the webinar, create a new meeting, send a new link. So that may seem like kind of an esoteric point, but the truth is that's something we've had to learn and deal with a lot here at CNBA, where we're doing 2 or 3 webinars and meetings per day. So that's just one tip that we've learned. Maybe it's helpful for you. Okay, another thing that we've learned is sharing of links and lost links are going to be a difficulty for most hosts. We can try to minimize that. You can imagine if you email out, I think that the registrations were over 50 for this webinar that we're in now. Not all those people are going to keep that email and have that link. And so you get a lot of requests for, oh, can you resend a link? Oh, I'm in, but I can't participate. Webinar panelists receive their own personal link. Panelists' name and email must be included in the zoom.us event setup. In other words, if I'm the host, I've got to put the panelist's name and email in there. That's my responsibility, setting up the webinar to do it that way. You can't share that link with somebody else. In other words, you're a panelist and your fellow panelist says, hey, Judy, I lost my link. Can you send it? You can't send yours. You have to let the host know and they can resend a link. There's a place in Zoom where it's very easy to resend that host link. If a meeting requires registration, the link to registration can be shared. Hey, click here to register. You can share that, but after you've registered, you're going to get a link that cannot be shared. It's user specific. It's for you only, and it won't work if you just share that link. Only if you create a meeting that does not require registration. Anybody can just click the link and join it. That can be shared. I know that's confusing. I know that might seem, sort of in the weeds, but that is something that we've struggled with a lot at CMBA, and we've tried very hard to manage it. And if you are going to be meeting organizers, it's something that you can look forward to. Okay, so we're gonna create a meeting right now. So you guys can still see my screen, that's great. This is the Zoom.us website. This is the home base for everything that you're gonna do. My account. This is logged in as CMBA Communications. So when I click on my account, the little icon that you can see over there at the right, I hope you guys can see my mouse pointer too. I just went to my account because I'm already logged in. If you're not logged in, it will say create an account. And it's as simple as that, how you create an account. For your organization, you can create an account and you can assign users to that account. If you're an individual and just want to attend a meeting, you can just create an account for yourself and there's no charge for that. So we're talking about meetings. So over here on the left, you click on meetings and you can see all of the meetings that are happening coming up on this one Zoom CMBA account. You can go in and edit them. You can do a lot of different, you can start the meeting from here. But what we're gonna do is schedule a new meeting. So schedule a new meeting. And I'm gonna call this Test CMBA Webinar Meeting, whatever. No, I'm just calling it Test CMBA Meeting because that's confusing. Here, put a description. The description goes out in your email invitation, so you want to be giving people a full picture of what they can expect when they attend. Be creative with what you write if you're trying to entice people, if it's something you want to encourage people to attend. When? I'm going to schedule it for today, and I'm going to schedule it for 8 p.m. because I know there's nobody using this account tonight at 8 p.m. You don't have to mess with time zone. That should be, here's where you set the duration, an hour, 90 minutes, 30 minutes, etc. Recurring, you can make a weekly meeting. And that way you don't have to send out new links every week to the people who are participants. Although I can tell you, yes, sometimes you will have to do that anyway. This is the place where registration is required. That means you have to get their name or an email address before they come in, or can anybody with a Zoom account come in? For security, in most cases with the outside world, you're going to use registration. I sometimes don't use registration for internal meetings. I imagine there might be some security IT experts who would say that's not a great idea, but that's how we've been doing it. Meeting password, likewise. If you're requiring registration, you can add additional security by requiring a meeting password. We generally don't do this because we at CMBA are in the business of encouraging people to engage and participate, so we don't necessarily want to put obstacles. However, I think for a lot of you who may be doing privileged, court-related legal proceedings, a password would be a good idea. When you can set host video on or off. When the host first joins, do you want their video to be on or off? I'm usually the host on these things, so I usually say keep it on. Do you want, when people come into the meeting, their video to be on or off? Do you want them to have to manually turn it on, or do you want it to be automatically on? For a meeting, if I've chosen it as a meeting, I tend to select that. Audio, you want both computer audio. And the reason for that is, the host, your best presentation by far is going to be through the microphone that's built into your computer or your device. You don't want to have to be on the phone, but some people will join by the phone. And so just click both and you're good. Meeting options. Enable join before host. I usually do click that for things that are very loose and informal. Example, we've done yoga sessions or meditation for our members. That's not a high security type of thing. And so if somebody shows up before the host I'll let them in the room. That's fine. Mute participants on entry. Really good idea to do this, because then by default they're muted and they can't speak. And as you know, if you might have 20, 30 people in your meeting, it's easier to control audio that way. Enable waiting room. I suggest that you do use the waiting room. When you folks, if any of you were trying to join this meeting before I opened it up, you may have seen host hasn't started the webinar yet. Just a simple, if you enable waiting room, the host can send you messages. Hey folks, we're about to start. The host can invite certain people in. Hey, I want Bill and Sally in here, but I don't want the rest of the people in. If you've enabled the waiting room, you can do that. And so I would suggest that you do that. Only authenticated users can join. I do not click this. This has to do with Zoom security. And again, in the interest of allowing the most people ease of access, I normally don't do that.
Brennan, going back to the waiting room for 1 second, is the waiting room then individualized, or would the participants be in a waiting room together?
No, they're not in it together. I have not myself been in the waiting room, but I've asked folks about that, and they said, no, we couldn't see or talk to each other. So that unless someone has a different experience with that. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Breakout room pre-assigned. If you're going to want to create breakout rooms, and I'm going to get into that in a few minutes, then check that. Once you've created a meeting and started the meeting, if you haven't created breakout rooms, then you're not going to be able to do it. And so, and they can be very useful, as I'll explain. And this part's kind of important. Do you want to record this meeting? There are proceedings that you absolutely do not want to record, and all the parties involved would not want it recorded, just as you wouldn't record a face-to-face meeting in certain proceedings. We record most everything that we do, record the meeting automatically. If you want it, you can also manually click record, and everybody's notified by a little note at the top of their screen. You folks, maybe because it's a webinar you don't, but you would generally see, hey, this is being recorded, so people are made aware. The choice is record it on the local computer or in the cloud. I'm gonna say in the cloud. If you're super concerned about highest video quality and you've got some savvy and some skills with video, like editing it and things like that, recording it on the local computer will give you a better quality file. However, if you record it in the cloud, it's there in Zoom, it's easy to access, and you know, you can download it very easily. It records a text file of the chat that goes along with the meeting. And so I just say go with the cloud. You know, it's a Zoom meeting. The quality is not going to be broadcast quality anyway. So those are the items. And then you click save, and we have our meeting. That's all it takes. That meeting is now scheduled. Now,
and I would just add one thing onto that, Brennan. If it's saving the chat, be careful with whom you're chatting and what you're saying, because it can get saved to the recording, even if they're individualized chats. So I know there's been problems with that before with security and people messaging things that they did not want everyone to see. If you're sending something in the chat, just presume that other people could see it if they do record and save that message.
Yes, that's great. And we are going to go through chat here in a few minutes. So here's what you can see. We've created this meeting. There are two things. This is the registration link. Remember I said this can be shared with anyone? You can simply right click on that, copy link, put that in an email, and that's how you can invite people to this. Or you can click this button here, which says copy invitation. This window is going to pop up, copy meeting invitation. So you can see it's copied to clipboard. You can paste that right in an email, and it has, you know, a little more detail. So that's how you're going to invite people to your meeting, via copy or via the link. You're not going to, Zoom doesn't have a registry where you enter folks for a meeting the same way it does for a webinar, which we're going to discuss. So if you go down here, all the settings that we previously selected are there. Registration, nobody's registered yet, of course. And then you could start the meeting, or you can edit the meeting and go back and do, change any of the parameters that you set. I'm gonna pause right now just to see if there are any questions. It seems like a good time to talk about any questions about creating a meeting or any of the settings that I went through.
Yeah, so one question we have, Brennan, is with respect to transcribing meetings,
Yes.
how long usually does it take for the meeting to be transcribed? Because it seems like some people have tried to do so and it's taken 2 weeks and it's still saying that it's being transcribed.
As best as I can tell, the Zoom feature for transcription is kind of in beta. In other words, we had a discussion yesterday about this where we were trying to transcribe a meeting and then add it as closed captions. And that feature is tricky because it uses speech recognition, and speech recognition as it stands for a meeting like this in Zoom is not very accurate. So I mean, this is rather advanced, but if I had to do it, Zoom, when it records to the cloud, creates a separate audio file. It creates an audio and video file, but then it creates also a separate file that's just audio. You can take that audio file, and if you search, online transcription, there are a number of services that can do that. The built-in Zoom functionality, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to really share a lot on that because I'm only learning it myself. And what I'm learning is it's really only in development. It's not something we've used a lot. Hopefully
another question we have is, how does someone know whether or not they can be seen during the meeting?
In the bottom left hand of your Zoom window, the window that has like the black around the screen, there's a mute button and there's a share video button. Those are you control if you're muted and if you're sharing video, and likewise the host can control that for you. So I've got a little bit of information on that coming up, but like you look at those settings, and also there's a participants list that you can click on. We can talk about that right now. If there is a button that all of you should have that says participants at the bottom of your screen, if you click on that button that says participants, you will see a list pops up of all the people that are here in the webinar. Do you see that? Is anybody out there? Let's see.
I'm being told that they cannot see that as an attendee.
Because we set this up as a webinar. I think in future editions, we'll definitely set it up as a meeting. We set it up as a webinar because that's been our policy, but I do have some slides coming up that will show you that. Participants, and then there's also a chat button. If you click on that chat button, a window will come up where you can then send a message to all panelists. If you're in a meeting, you can send a message to all individual participants in that meeting. And so that's how that works.
Going back to the breakout rooms, are you able to create breakout rooms without pre-assigning who goes into which room?
Yes, as long as you click that box, you don't have to, you just click pre-assign. You just have to tell the meeting that you're going to have breakout rooms, because we ran into this as recently as yesterday where we wanted to use breakout rooms, but we had not selected that, and there was no option for any of us as hosts of the meeting to use those breakout rooms. Let's go through this. We're going to create a webinar, and then I will go back because I do have a little bit more to say about breakout rooms and such. So I'm going to go back to screen sharing. Safari, yep, right there.
All right. And Brennan, while you're going back to that, we have a general question on what a breakout room is.
Okay. A breakout room is, if you think about it in terms of like a real world application, there's the main conference room, and then there are smaller rooms where people can go away and have private meetings outside of the main room. So a breakout room in Zoom is exactly the same as a breakout room in real life. So let's go through this other quickly. I'm just trying to get my right screen sharing here. Okay, you guys see my desktop? Does everybody see my Zoom conferencing window there? Kyleigh, can you see it?
I can see it.
All right, well, I'm going to assume.
And I haven't heard that anyone can't, so.
Okay, that's good. So again, my account, I won't spend as much time on this one. Webinars, I'm going to create a webinar. Schedule a webinar. My webinar, we're going to call it test CBA webinar, be creative. I'm not going to get into templates, but you can pre-assign some of the templates. I'm going to make this for 9 o'clock tonight, just to make sure I'm not causing trouble for anyone. 1 hour duration, again, require registration, recurring, all the same, require password, all the same. Now these are the different options. Enable Q&A, which I did for this, so you guys can ask questions via the Q&A. Enable practice session. It's important that you do this because when you start the webinar, if you haven't enabled a practice session, everybody who registers and says join is going to join in. Usually with a webinar, when you've got presenters, you're going to want only the presenters to be able to talk amongst themselves before they let everyone in the room. That's what a practice session is. So you want to enable that. I do not enable HD video, and the reason is it just uses up more bandwidth and increases the likelihood of people getting stuttering presentation. Authenticated users, no. Make the webinar on demand, no, you don't want that. That is for, you can, if you do a series of webinars and meetings, you can make them on demand through Zoom. In other words, you can say, take this 5-part series for our small and solo section for CLE. And you can do that, but that's not something that we're going to talk about today, and most people aren't going to do that. So record the webinar automatically. We talked about on the local computer, or the preferred way is definitely in the cloud. And then schedule it. And there is my webinar scheduled. Now, here's something to note. Invitations. Invite panelists. No panelists have been invited. So you can send this registration link out to the public, but you also have to go here, invite panelists, click edit, and you're going to enter name, email, name, email, name, email. And as soon as you hit save, a notification with their specific private link is going to go out to all of your panelists. There are other things in here as far as branding. You can upload logos. You know, if you're doing a webinar, if you want to make it look fancy, you can create polls that you can use. There are a lot of other features that we don't have time, but then that webinar has been created. So that's the difference between a webinar and a meeting and how you create both of them. We at CMBA, again, have, this has been our experience, the things that we had to learn. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Now I'm going to go back to this. You still see, Zoom host features, right, Kyleigh? Okay, good. So if you're the host of a meeting, you're going to see things a little differently than just the participants, and you're going to see things a little differently than the folks who are participants in a webinar. If you're the host, this button right here, this security button, was added. I think this was added in the 5.0 version. I'm not positive about that, but it was added in response to all the Zoom bombing. If you click on that security button, I can't do it live here with this graphic, but you will receive options to lock the meeting. Lock the meeting means if everybody's here that's coming, nobody else can come in. I can do that. I can kick people out. I can mute their audio. I can mute their video. That's accessed through the security button, and I can show you a little bit more of that here coming up.
If you kick someone out, are they able to get back in?
No, they are not. When you kick someone out, they can't come back in. They'd have to log in under a different email address. So you got to be judicious about not just kicking people out randomly, but I don't think most people are going to do that anyway. So participants, if you click on that button, a list of participants will pop up on the right hand of your screen, and I'll show you more of that. Chat, this is the function that you have. This is the share screen button. This is what I'm doing right now, is sharing my screen. If you were in a meeting, any participant can share their screen. You, as the host of that meeting, can stop them from sharing. You can block them from sharing, or you can let somebody else share, or you can take over and share your own screen. So with as the host, you've got complete control over that. Screen sharing, clearly important for what I'm doing now, which is sharing slides. Record, you remember I said auto record, set it up in the meetings. If for some reason you don't, or you don't want to use that, you can click on that record button. Now I'm going to talk about breakout rooms. I'm going to have to mostly talk about it because I don't have the capability to demonstrate it. That'll be in our next session. That's probably the most asked for thing for more explanation about. Click on that breakout rooms and you will see a series of choices. Everybody in that meeting will be in a list. And you can say, I want Billy and Bobby and Susie and Jenny and Mark to be in this. Click, 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 assign them to this room. They will be taken out of the main meeting and they will be sent to a private breakout room where they can interact with each other, but they aren't seen or heard by the main group. You can then go in there and say, I want these other 5 people to be in the other breakout room. And you assign that and you click it and then they're assigned to the other breakout room. You as the host can go back and forth between the breakout rooms. So you can talk to this group, you can talk to that group as a mediator would do or in other types of proceedings. And so that's how breakout rooms work. I'm happy to answer questions about it, but I can't really show you any more of the functionality other than what I just said.
If you put people in a breakout room and the meeting was previously being recorded, would the breakout rooms also be recorded?
I'm just going to say I don't know because that's the truth. That's something we would have to experiment with, and that is a good practice. And we do a lot of that here is do a test meeting. If it's important and you need it to go right, you can get some of the parties involved to do 2 days before, schedule a test meeting and try these things out. And that is a good practice that I recommend. It's something that we do. The last thing on this bottom bar I want to talk about is this more button. That's mostly relevant for if you want to share your stream like we're doing right now on Facebook Live or YouTube. If you want to live stream to Facebook or YouTube, under that more menu is, it's real simple. It just says stream to Facebook, stream to YouTube. You have to be logged into the proper Facebook account. In other words, if you click on stream it to Facebook, and you want to do it to like your work or your firm's Facebook account, if you're not logged in as your under your business Facebook, it'll go to your personal page and you'll be streaming live on your personal page. That's complicated for some folks, and I'll get into that. Again, I think that's a 2.0 kind of thing, but you can very easily, the bottom line is stream whatever you're doing to Facebook or to YouTube.
And we have received a comment that someone does not believe that the breakout rooms are recorded. So probably still best to test it and make sure, but that seems to be what I'm being told.
I'm going to investigate that and try to get an answer, but we haven't had that come up. So it's a good question. It would seem logical, and as with all this stuff, Zoom has very detailed help and FAQ pages. Zoom has a lot of, there are videos on YouTube, numerous, about specific things that you want to do. That is a great place for resources. Okay. If you had, this is what the host sees at the bottom of the participants window. You can see, I can end the meeting. Well, I'm not going to do that. I can invite somebody on the fly. Boy, I wish, you know, she were here. She knew all about that. Click. You can invite them on the fly. You can mute everybody at once. I've been in the background of some of the bench bar COVID-19 task force meetings where you have like 30 judges, administrators, and attorneys, actually 60 or 70. And I had to use the mute all one time because it was like people were having noise and background. And so you mute all and then you say, okay, Judge, I'm going to open your mic up and you can speak. And so you can do that. Under more, you have other things that you can do. And you over on the right-hand screen grab, that's what that is. Mute participants on entry, allow them to unmute themselves. You can mute them and make it so they can't unmute themselves. Play, enter, exit chime. If you have a big meeting and you want to know when somebody leaves or somebody comes in the room, that's what that setting's for. Generally, we don't use it. Lock meeting. Oh, every time I click on it, it goes, my slide goes forward. Lock meeting, that's the thing. Once you're in and no more people can come in. There's lower all hands. In a meeting, people would have the opportunity to raise their hand to ask a question. You can do that in enabling the waiting room. So as the host, you have a lot of features that you can use, a lot of control and security. And I know that has been a concern of many people, understandably so, because of the things that have happened. So we've done muting participant audio, breakout rooms, and screen sharing. That is what I have as far as a presentation. I hope we have other questions, or in the remaining 10 or 12 minutes or so, if there are things that I can help you with, please let's have a discussion.
So while I wait for some questions to hopefully come in, we do have a suggestion on virtual backgrounds. There is a room rater on Twitter that you can see comments on good and bad virtual backgrounds. So I know we can talk about maybe that while I wait for more questions to come in. Yeah,
there is, let's see what if I can do my own virtual background. You have probably all seen people that create a virtual background for themselves, and they have like an animated or an image behind them. Choose virtual background is under your video settings where it says start video or stop video. I can put this in here and either I'm going to crash or there we go. So there I am, virtual background, right? It is popular right now. As Kyleigh said, there are sites that provide with these virtual backgrounds and people have fun with them. I just say, think about what kind of image you want to project. Because even if it is, I've seen people do like a bookcase with legal books behind them, right? When you move, it's going to blur a little bit. It's not always clean. And, you want to ride a roller coaster in the meeting. It can be kind of distracting. I don't really recommend it, but I'm kind of an old stick in the mud too. So if you want to do it, go for it. The feature's built in. And there are lots and lots of downloadable backgrounds available online.
If you name a co-host, can the co-host also go between breakout rooms?
I believe they can, yes. Yes, I think that's another thing that we ought to check. I'm quite serious about, we can do a 2.0 version of this and answer a lot of these questions about breakout rooms and specific things. There's something else I can do. I will send to all the participants, I'm going to send this slide deck. I'm also going to send a one sheet that is just good tips for Zoom. And we did a mediation training for volunteer mediators who are going to try to help disperse some of the backlog in the courts once we get back to real life. And they went into breakout rooms a little bit more. And if I'm able to share that link, I'll include that. Otherwise, we'll do another session on that. So I don't want to give you a wrong information and answer in a way that I don't know if it's true.
I should mention on June 12th, we are doing another seminar on evidentiary hearings by Zoom with Magistrate Hockheiser and my co-chair, John Ramsey. And I believe that's at noon on June 12th, but I'm sure someone in here can correct me through the chat if I'm wrong on the time. In the meantime, Brennan, we have another question. If you could explain in more detail how to email the invitations to a meeting.
Sure, I will. Let's go back to browser. US. I'm just getting it set up here for a second so I can show you rather than tell you. All right, grab that. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Desktop 2. There we go. You should all see that. So meetings. I'm going to go to this test CMBA meeting that we created. Make this full screen. So if you can see on this page, there are two ways you send out the invitation. You either copy this link, and that'll copy just the link. So I would do copy link by right-clicking on it, paste that into an email in your email, whatever you're using, and send it that way. Or you can click on this copy invitation, and that brings up a window that says, hi there, you're invited to a Zoom meeting. Here's the information, click here to register. You can copy that text, copy, and that's on my clipboard, and then you can paste that directly into an email, and then you can modify it. You can say, hey, committee, we're having our lunch and learn, or you can change it, but your information about the time and date and the link is there. So you're gonna paste that into Outlook or whatever you're using for to send your emails. Or you could paste it also into an Outlook invitation on a calendar. That's probably how we do it most frequently. Does that help? Hopefully, yes.
I believe so. We have another. Is the invite different if the meeting doesn't require registration? The invite will be different, yes, because it will say click here to join. It won't say click, if I bring this up again, it says register in advance for this meeting. If it's a meeting that does not require registration, it will just say click here to join meeting. And if you put that in the Outlook calendar invitation, everybody will have that link right there, and they just click on that. And then I think Zoom is pretty good about, if you don't have Zoom installed, setting it up for you. Okay. All right. It looks like if you use Office 365, the subscription includes something called Teams, which can be used like Zoom, and there's no additional license cost.
Yes, that is true. And we, like all of us who kind of dove into this COVID-19 world, we scrambled fast and we settled on Zoom as ease of use was the main reason. It was like we reach the public, we reach our members, we reach an audience out there. We can't control what platforms and such. So we felt Zoom was the best multi-platform, easy to use, anybody can do it kind of platform. There are other alternatives. Skype can do most of this stuff. And we're not in a meeting. I keep saying that we're in a webinar, unfortunately, but if you were in a meeting, you could share files as well. There was a specific question about sharing files. You can enable in a meeting the function to allow people to click a button and share a JPEG, share a Word document, share an Excel sheet, anything, the common formats of files. So that's an alternative to screen sharing. If you want them to have the actual file during the meeting, you can do that. Or screen sharing tends to be the way that we've done it most.
All right. I don't have any other questions oh, just kidding.
Yeah, I hope I've been useful. I know there's a lot, but I hope that it provides at least some. And if folks can email me, I encourage you to do that.
Okay, so it looks like we have another question about the Zoom 5.0 and the update that's coming this weekend. What is the 5.0? What happens if you don't update to the 5.0?
If you don't update to the 5.0, you can't log into the Zoom server to have a meeting. It will say, it won't just block you, it'll say you have Zoom 4 point something, you need to upgrade, and you'll just click the upgrade button. So what will happen, the announcement they sent out is that you can't do it starting Monday with anything other than Zoom 5.0 for security reasons. If you're in the Zoom app and you look in the upper left corner of the menus at the very top of your screen, where it says zoom.us, it says meeting, view, etc. There's a thing there that says check for updates. You can simply click on that menu item and that will check for updates, and you can upgrade to Zoom 5.0 that way. A lot of folks, it's been Zoom 5.0 for at least a month. So a lot of folks probably already have it, but it is something to be aware of.
And one thing to keep in mind, if you have Zoom on multiple devices on your laptop, iPad, phone, you'll need to update each app separately rather than just doing your iPad and thinking that covers all of your bases. So it looks like we can wait a few more minutes to see if any other questions come in. I did get confirmation that the June 12th seminar is on evidentiary hearings through Zoom. Nick Ranillo is doing the technical part of that seminar. Magistrate Hockheiser is speaking from the court, and my co-chair John Ramsey is moderating that seminar on June 12th at noon.
Okay, folks. Well, I don't have more to share. Obviously, we could go into a lot more detail. I will take any feedback received from this event and work it into another session. If that is useful to people, I'm very happy to do it.
And Brennan and I spoke earlier. I know there's a lot of court personnel on here. If we want to do a separate seminar for court personnel hosting pre-trials or meetings, let me know, and the CMBA is happy to set that up. And we just had a question come in. An Android phone says that they're not connected to the internet when they try to Zoom.
It says you're not connected to the internet when you try to Zoom. Assuming that the computer is connected to the internet in other ways, you know, you can get your email, you can go to websites. You may have to have, if you have a network administrator or someone like that, look at it. I've not seen that, and that would indicate there's a problem. The first thing I would check is make sure you're connected to the internet, period. There may be some, I know a lot of people are working from home, but if you are working from an office, there can be firewall settings that your IT administrator needs to adjust in order to let Zoom through. So I would check with your IT person, and if you're working at home and don't have an IT person, I'm sorry, you can email me and I'll try to help.
Okay, that looks like it is it for the questions. Brennan, thank you for your time and for the presentation. I think it's been very helpful. And again, June 12th at noon for the evidentiary hearings by Zoom. Oh. We actually just got one question in, Brennan. If you have a poor connection, what's the best way to handle that?
Well, that's a tricky one. We did have a situation where we were recording an important session, an important CLE that we were doing, and the presenter, his home internet was just not adequate. I mean, that's the bottom line. It was not adequate. A hardline internet connection is always preferred over Wi-Fi. In other words, if you are capable of plugging in an Ethernet cable into your device and into your router wherever you are, that is preferred. That's a little advanced for most people. So at the very least, you need to make sure you have a strong Wi-Fi signal. In any device, when you connect to Wi-Fi, it shows you how many bars that you have, how strong your connection is. You really need to have all the bars to be relatively certain that you're going to have a good experience, because so the answers go somewhere else. What we ended up doing with our colleague that needed to present was we asked him to go to his office rather than his home, because he had bad internet at home and very good internet at the office. I know that's not always an option for everybody, but yes, making sure you have good signal strength is key to having a good experience. And if you don't, things will start breaking up, chopping up, dropping out, and everybody will be very frustrated.
And we kind of a word to the wise, don't take for granted that your computer does have a camera, speaker, microphone. Double check that to make sure you have all of the necessary devices on your system to be able to do all the things that we've talked about today. I know a lot of iPads, the computer is, or the camera's off to the side. So be cognizant of that when you're starting to record yourself or have your video running, that it may not be central like a lot of laptops are.
Yes, good advice.
Brennan, are you able to give us your email address for people who have specific questions for you?
I'm gonna type it right now at clevelandbar.org in the chat. I just sent that only to all panelists. See, I want to send it to all attendees. So bdonnellan at clevelandbar.org. bdonnellan, that's bdonnellan at CLE Metrobar, metrobar.org. So that's the best way to reach me, and please don't hesitate to let me know if I can help.
All right, if there's no other questions, then I think this will conclude our seminar for today. Again, Brennan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Brennan.